Hey, it's Chris, Liege Games. Let's do this. I thought I'd go back to a formula that worked because I liked doing it the first time. I'm just going back to what I liked, essentially. Let's do viewer emails. Number 2. I have 5 emails that I'll be answering today from clearly not completely made up emails or names or anything like that. That, you know, I thought I would answer in front of the camera so you guys could, you know, hear it, talk about it, and discuss it among yourselves at home, right? There's totally not a cat wandering around in here today either. So, I don't know. That's all I got. No preamble today. We're just going straight into it. Straight into the emails. Let's go to them. Hope we don't get any of those junk emails like we did last time. Ugh. Okay. Liege Games. Okay. Board games, duh. Dear Liege, please help us settle the ultimate board game question of the week of the century. I like where this is going already. Miniatures versus standees. Sincerely, Plastic Man. Okay. So, let's talk about this for a second. Let's just go to crowdfunding because this is where this whole potentiation comes from, right? This is a big, big, big dilemma of really monetary proportions and monetary-wise. Because it all sort of frames around what do you prefer aesthetically, right? That's really the argument. What do you want from an aesthetic perspective on the tabletop? And you can argue, and I think this is actually even relevant. I hate that, you know, it kind of shows up under there in the tabletop games, but the RPGs. When you think of the evolution of the RPGs, something like Dwarven Forge nowadays, right? As opposed to Theater of the Mind on the D&D side of things. Now, you know, with Critical Role and all that side of stuff. Now, it's a trickle-down effect, I feel like, in that sense, where you're seeing a lot more of it, people are expecting it, and thus they want it. Well, at least the ones with more disposable income. Whether or not it's needed, I mean, that's a whole nother debate. I look at games like El Grande, for example, that just uses little cubes, right? No big deal. But let's talk about this. Frosthaven, relatively contained, the exception rather than the rule. Well, we don't need to talk about this. If you don't know about KDM, I mean, it's pretty much the genre-defining one that is still playing off of that. The Witcher, again, I give them a lot of credit because there was a pledge without. But, just like a lot of these, like the Awakened Realm things, you know, how many people get it with versus without? Now, we'll talk about The Witcher here for just a second because this one is a interesting case study, if you will, on miniatures heavy versus not miniatures along the lines of the Awakened Realm side of things. Because if you say nothing about Awakened Realms, you know that they offer them separately. At least the majority of them separately. There are still a fair number, but if you want them for everything, for like Isis Vanguard, or look at all this stuff, this other stuff, they offer it more as a superlative edition, not necessarily a core box justification. And so I give those companies a lot of credit for being willing to kind of go halvesies on it, you know? And it does keep the price point down. I mean, £95 for Nemesis Lockdown. Guarantee it's not going to go for that on secondary retail with a stretch goal box included. And that has nothing to do with miniatures. That's just content. But let's take a look at this. Because that's always the debate. Like, especially when games don't fund and they're miniature heavy, that topic invariably comes up. And I think the classic one was Heroes of like Land, Sea, and Air. The one from, I think it's Scott Alms? One of those, the tiny epic side of things. Sort of bigger and bolder and... But look at this. Okay. So this had how many backers? 45,000 backers. Okay. 3,000 backers, 3,500 backers got it without the miniature heavy stuff, right? That's pretty reasonable, actually. But then you look at the with miniatures, the deluxe, and it's almost 17,000. So 15% essentially with just the core, plus or minus. Then you have the gameplay all in. You have, again, a very, very, very respectable 5,300. But then you get to this one, the all-in. And now, granted, there's a few other things in there, but really, they're getting a lot of extra miniatures. 10,000. So that's actually a much higher percentage there of 33%. And yes, I mean, this is where it is, right? Deluxe pledge, extra monster miniatures. Extra monster miniatures. Extra plastic, extra plastic, extra plastic. And do you want all that extra plastic? I am now in the phase of my gaming life, if you will, where I don't have a space issue. I don't. This room that you see me in, I could use this all as storage if my wife let me, which she would. I don't want that much though. Like, I'm not one of those collectors. I do not like having unpainted plastic chunks on the table. Sometimes it looks fine, but it always feels to be missing something aesthetically. So now that you've got other games coming at the production retail side of things, like Vagrant Song, one of my best games of 2021, and I mean, these are really impressive, folks. It gives color, it saves space, and this game is not that much more expensive than any of those Kickstarter games, and you're getting it in a much smaller size, which, again, for people who are living in a smaller space, are living in an apartment or condo, whatever it may be, don't have a whole home to throw stuff in every other place, or a significant other that will tolerate it for that extent, this is great. I mean, this is the huge thing, as I talked about in D&D, right? This was a huge success. I mean, skinny minis. These are massive quality. And I would be happy to play with these on a board game. And so I think we're going to see the rise of things like this, especially with the color. The color is splendiferous. Liege approved color. But until companies sort of get away from the plastic, and I think maybe, and I don't know where these can be made as opposed to a lot of the factory stuff that people go overseas for already. Can these be done anywhere else in the world? I mean, stuff like that is going to be the biggest make it or break it. But my opinion is I'd rather have something like this with all these minis, skinny minis, that is. Acrylic standees is really what they are. Let's just call them by that name because that's what we're talking about here. Rather than all of this stuff. I would. I'm not going to paint the majority of this. It's going to be gray. It's bulky. It's going to take up 3 times as much space as it needs to. And I am more for quality over quantity nowadays. And so for me personally, just based on that, based on The Witcher as the most extreme example, because the rest of the campaigns that I could pull up here that offered standees versus miniatures are not going to have anywhere near 33% or 15% standees. They're going to be like 3 or 5. They are. I know because I've backed some of those other ones. I've been one of the 3 or 5%. And it's okay. But will we see an evolution towards this? I'd love to see an evolution towards this stuff. I mean, look at this. This has front and back art. Is that fantastic or not? Because the other complaint is I don't have time to paint. I can't paint. I'm going to pay someone else to paint. Look at that. You don't need to paint. It's freaking fantastic. And no, they didn't pay me anything to talk about this. I just know because I backed the first Kickstarter and I ended up selling them because my D&D group fell apart. But they're easy to use. They're great. Vagrant Song is essentially just that. It's exactly what it is. And so I hope we see more of this because I think you could convert a lot of people in terms of time, space, and money. The last one being the least important because I see plenty of people with plenty of disposable income, like I said, but decreased time setup, decreased space, those are the 2 issues that I see everyone complaining about. So that's why I think I would prefer to see more of this. Heck, just on the retail side of things, especially on the crowdfunding side of things. Okay, email number 2. Liege Games, Christmas wishlist. Dear Liegest of Lieges, if you could only get 3 games for Christmas, what would they be? And why are none of them named Adventure Tactics? You son of a gun. You didn't even sign your email. What a lousy, no good low blow there. I'll get Adventure Tactics eventually. It's out of stock most places right now. That's besides the point. Now, let's put some parameters on this, right? Because there's a lot of stuff out there. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to say games that I can actually get. Like, not like pre-orders. Like, no one, no one's going, oh, sweet, I got a little thing in my box that says I get a little pre-order, right? Let's talk about games that I could buy and get by Christmas. This is going to air before Christmas? This is going to air before Christmas. I've just decided. That'd be awful awkward. Games you want to get by Christmas airing on December 27th. Anyway, so let's talk about it. And this one was a little tougher. I had to actually peruse my wish list because a lot of the stuff on my wish list is stuff that is upcoming on Kickstarter, stuff that is still currently funding, stuff that is funded, but I did not back because I'm waiting for retail. So it had to be narrowed down just a little bit from that side of things. So let's go to this. So the first one up, as my top 2 game, my second best game of 2020, just to show you that I'm still thinking about it, is Thingvellir, the expansion for Nidavellir. And as much as I have not actually played it, it's also not leaving my collection. So that's why I want the expansion, just adding more of everything good that comes with Thingvellir. Plus, it's like freaking cheap, man. You know, it's like under 20 bucks. So not difficult at all from that side of things. More hero cards, more strategy, just a little bit of everything good from that side of things. I'm just a fan. I'm a fanboy of it. It's going to stay in my collection. It doesn't get played enough, but I have no qualms about saying this would be near the top of my list. Now, these other 2 are going to fall a little bit different. You may have heard of one of them because it's been making the rounds on social media, but you probably haven't heard of the other one, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a Liege surprise here. First one up, Brian Boru, High King of Ireland. I'm like, Brian Boru? Osprey Games. Now, most of the other stuff Osprey Games has put out has been too heavy for me. Although I do have the Imperium Legends sitting behind me, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But this game from Osprey Games really seems to be a little bit different take, because if you've heard me rant and rave and ramble and all those other things, I'm not a big fan of area control. However, I do enjoy me some trick-taking. However, you have also heard me say that trick-taking games are awful hard to get to the table sometimes. Now, what if you blended the 2 and made a little Saiyan fusion out of them, and made them into a game based on ancient Ireland? Ancient? Can I say ancient? Is that ancient enough? I don't know. Probably not. What if you did that? You would get Brian Boru. Now, the tricky thing there, dad pun, sorry, I couldn't resist, is that you're playing these tricks out as you go. And when you play them, if you win, you increase your influence in the area. Awesome. That's great. Why would I not want to win a trick, Chris? Because the tricks and the cards themselves, the suits, give you different actions if you lose the trick. And so then you're going to want to do other things in those areas. And so sometimes you're intentionally going to throw the trick in the first place to do what you actually want to do. And that sounds kind of freaking amazingly cool. Now, the other side note that you need to be aware of, though, is as an area control game, which makes sense. I don't know how you can do too many area control games lower than this, but this is a 3 to 5 player game. So you're going to have 3. Sorry. It is what it is. I mean, it's like playing Blood Rage with 2. Don't do it. Friends don't let friends play Blood Rage with 2. Yeah. So that's why I'm excited about Brian Boru. And as much as I don't always taste-wise align with several of the other big people out there, I think definitely No Pun Included talked about this. Space Biff has talked about this, and both, I think, give it relatively glowing endorsements. And I think maybe Shut Up and Sit Down did it too. I can't remember. But that's why I'm interested in this one too, because it just has elements that I don't see anywhere else, and are being done in an innovative, unique way. I mean, because again, that is the one thing I espout all the time, especially on the crowdfunding roundup videos. Reward innovation. And because it breeds things like this down the line. I mean, look at Gloomhaven. I mean, imitation, sincerest form of flattery, anyone? Like, so many things have been based off of that and KDM. And just iterations of it. And it's leading to innovation. Now, I'm not saying all of those things are the most innovative, but you can pick and choose and start to see some really good elements from a few of those games that can be, again, then used later on in different ways and different iterations. And so it's spawning ingenuity within the hobby, which is, again, great. And so that's also why I love seeing things like this. And that's why this is on my list. Now, the third game you've probably never heard of. I had never heard of it until about a week ago. But if you know Lord of the Board, great guy. Don't know him at all, but I'm going to say he's a great guy. Has some really interesting stuff. I've touched base with him once or twice on Twitter, but he was talking about games that he like really loved or has liked or has interested in, whatever, you know what I'm saying, in 2021. And so this one came across. Nicaea? I'm going to pronounce this wrong. So this game on the surface, again, just like Brian Boru, nope. Aesthetically, nope. We're just talking about aesthetics with the first email, right? I need some aesthetics that are pleasing. Why am I interested in this game? Again, it's an interesting collection of mechanics. Hand management, hidden victory points, tableau building, and again, I'm going to put the website up here from Hollandspiel, who don't even know I exist, which is completely okay. I barely know I exist sometimes. But the thing that, also you really just need to know is the description on the website itself. I mean, right? Not only has it been a hot minute since they were forced to renounce their faith on pain of death, but the Emperor Constantine has really leaned into it, hoping it will unite the often fractured Roman Empire. So the big guy isn't super thrilled when bishops immediately get into nitpicky, esoteric arguments that John Quintus Romanus doesn't give two flips about. He demands that the bishops gather together in the city of Nicaea, I almost screwed that up, to come to an accord. He doesn't really care about what these nerds decide, so long as they decide something. This gathering is given irreverent treatment. I love this. Whether a position ends up as accepted orthodoxy or heresy has nothing to do with the theology and everything to do with the politics. And so that's essentially what this game is about. It's about the political side of getting your stuff passed and just looking really cool while doing it with the different cards and powers and tableaus and managements, and it just looks awesome. Again, probably too heavy for me. But it's on my radar all of a sudden when it wasn't. And again, the biggest problem with this is not the price point. Who cares? $50, and you guys spend twice that much at retail anyway, probably, for Christmas. But it's, again, 60 to 90 minutes is great if it actually goes that long. This one right here, 4 to 6 players. 4-player minimum, essentially. So that right there is a high barrier to entry. It is for me. Again, 4 people. 4 people that are going to learn this moderately complex game. Because let's go back to Board Game Geek. What's the scale on this one? It doesn't have one. Okay. But that's what you need to know. So that one's on my short list of things that you could buy right now that you could get. Now, pre-order, that's a whole nother conversation. But we have to go back to the emails. So let's get back to the emails. Email number 3. Liege Games. Asmodee? Dear Sir or Madame. Oh, where are we going here? How much of a big deal is it that Asmodee is getting sold? What do you mean by Miniature Market is owned by them too? Sincerely, Fries Hipping Dude. It's one of those weird hyphen names. I don't know. I must be German or something. I don't know. I'm not familiar with it. So how big of a deal is it? You've got all the little websites, nerddom, fandom, video game dumb, board game dumb talking about it, right? Video game company Embracer Group, conversations with PAI partners to buy French board game publisher Asmodee. A little bit interesting. Leader in the board game industry, selling 39 million copies. Well, it's because they've bought up everyone else. I mean, they've sort of bought up and created a little bit of a monopoly on that side of things. So that's, that's very tricky wording on that. Because, like they say, a lot of other subsidiaries, not only in Asmodee, but also in the Embracer Group. Because they own a lot of the other video game side of things. And this leads me on to a whole nother topic that I will be putting out maybe in the next week or two of video games, and the board game world. So let's talk about it again, because we will. But that's the question. If these entities were combined, 100 game development studios and 500 owned IPs and brands. Now, the interesting thing is that it says operate independently and undergo no reorganization. So why are you buying it then? Is this like a stock pump, like a pump up and dump, essentially? And eventually, someone else buys this, because, I mean, I feel like this is the second time we've heard something similar in terms of this news and Asmodee and that side of things, where eventually something's going to happen, and stuff is going to get cut, stuff's going to get, reorganized, stuff's going to get burned, I think, from the board gaming side of things. Or, the other side of things is just going to be a huge price increase. Because that's the other thing that we've seen with Asmodee, and I think they just raised prices again. They're buying things up like Plan B Games, which is fine. But, let's ask Plaid Hat Games how well that worked out for them when they were bought up and then subsequently exited. You know, it's not always the best to be part of these mega glom corporation entities. And it's a little scary, especially when you've got, you know, miniature market sort of caught up in there. And I think that was part of the release that people found out, is that it's actually been apparently like owned by them or partially owned. There's some background there for some time. And so again, you know, what is that going to do for distribution? What is that going to do for prices, essentially? Now, again, you know, going back to the topic of miniatures back there at the beginning of the video, well, I mean, the number 3 thing on there, the third thing that I mentioned, that's in less demand issues, is money, disposable income. But, you know, still, you're going to start pricing people out of the hobby. I mean, look at video games now. $60, buying my kid a new Nintendo Switch game, $60. It's a lot of money. And we've already seen the rise of cost on crowdfunding in the last couple of years with the deluxeifications, the miniaturifications. I can say that. Miniaturifications, that works. I'm going to go with it. It's a Liege-ism. I'll add it to the list of when I do my shop, and you can get it on a shirt that says Liege-isms and miniature. Anyway, Space Kraken! So, sorry, it just comes over me. The other interesting thing on this page is Asmodee to make a strategic investment in exploding kittens. As long as you know that that's a board game and not something else. But I mean, you know, what do you do with this? Because, I mean, we have no control over this. It's, you know, just like with crowdfunding, it's how you choose to spend your money. And are you going to choose to support this and everything goes along with it? Are you going to try and get away from anything that they own? I mean, it's sort of like trying to get away from things that, like, Coke owns, right? You know, like, until you realize, like, there are like a dozen brands of beverages that are all under the Coke umbrella or the Pepsi umbrella that aren't even like soda related or pop related, if you're from where I'm from, that are associated with it. And so you're really supporting the same parent company, but you just didn't know it because they've got a different label slapped on it. And are you okay with that or not? So that's what this is really going to come down to. And honestly, I have no idea. But it's going to hurt the wallet, I think, regardless. Whether or not, you know, it's now or a year from now or 2 years from now when this thing gets bought and sold again, that's going to be the issue. So there you go. Back to the emails. Number 4. Liege games, base games or expansions? Hey, Chris, love the show. Longtime watcher, first time caller, emailer. How do you feel about expansions showing up with crowdfunding games? Is it just the base game content separated out, or is it really necessary stuff right away? Thanks. Sneedly L. Sneed. It's like someone made up these names. You can't even, you know, people naming their kids Sneedly nowadays. I mean, especially when your last name is Sneed in the first place. Anyway. So how do you feel about that? How do you feel about crowdfunding games that come with expansions out already? And not just, you know, like one expansion, right? That's something. You know, okay, you know, let's go with the Spirit Island, right? Spirit Island, they separated out the promo packs in the first Kickstarter because they thought, you know, rightly so, this is a little bit of a complex game. If we include it all in the base game, we're going to a little bit overwhelm people. And, you know, very much appreciate it. You know, some very diligent thought behind that, which makes a lot of sense. However, we're now seeing the rise, the plethora of expansion after expansion after expansion on the crowdfunding campaign. And I'm not sure, Sneedly, if that is a extension of people just trying to strike while the iron is hot and induce FOMO and completionism and all of that. If it's, I'm not sure if this one doesn't do as well as we think, if we're ever going to be able to make another crowdfunding campaign down the line and get this made in the first place. And I already have this idea in my mind and I want to get it all out there at once. Or if it's just something in between. Because, I mean, look at the Simons. I mean, right? Like, this is a great example, actually. Okay. How many expansions were we talking? Actually, let's just go on to the pledge level. Expansion number 1, First Class, Blue Team, Gold Team, Phoenix 5, Deadpool, Days of the Future Past, Fantastic Four. 8 expansions. 8 expansions. And I'm not even talking about the deluxeifications of, you know, the locations and the playmat and the tokens. So, I mean, that's a whole nother side of things. I mean, that's a whole nother Liege of Games rant. But 8 expansions. Did they need to do all 8? I mean, do all of them have exclusive stuff on them? For the most part, yeah. And do you need them all? How many of you in the audience have played through every single hero and villain from the first Marvel United campaign? Anyone raising their hands in the audience? Anyone? No, you didn't play through them all. I guarantee you didn't. Maybe you over there did though. I haven't. I've played the game like 30 times. We've played villains, multiple times, but we haven't played through them all. Haven't played through all of the expansion stuff. Well, actually, you know what? I have probably played through most of my expansion stuff because I traded away a few of the expansions I wasn't sold on. That makes sense, right? I wasn't sold on them. Different use of meaning of the word sold there. But that's what my concern is, right? Again, because how many expansions of this do you actually play? I actually did not, and I regret it. Truth be told, I regret not ponying up the extra, I don't know, 100, 120 bucks to get the all-in. Because I really want me some Old Man Logan. But I didn't really want Fantastic Four. I didn't really want Deadpool. I didn't really want First Class. So I didn't get it. So I just didn't buy the other ones. And you know what? I'm going to have a better chance to play through all of it. And sometimes it feels like it's a fully fleshed out game with just the base game, and sometimes it doesn't. The original Marvel United, to use this example to stay with this one, did not. I mean, it was okay, but it was clearly lacking some of the depth that a lot of people were looking for, and I guess that makes it okay from a retail side of things, but I've also heard a lot of people pick up just the retail version and be very disappointed with it, and not understand the true depth and nuance and difficulty of the game in the first place, and looking at more as just a simple children's game that you played twice and you played through everything that has to offer. And that's not true. And how do you feel about it going back to The Witcher? I mean, how many expansions did The Witcher have, right? Mages, Legendary Hunt, Skilliage. 3 expansions. Is Skilliage the ocean one? I forget. I don't know. But, I mean, that's not a small amount either. Yeah, it is the ocean one. I was right. And some of this stuff was up for debate. Some of the gameplay was up for debate during the campaign. And, again, how do you feel about that? Like, we're still designing it during the campaign, which is a little bit scary at the same time, right? Because if I'm going to pay 35 euros for this, I want to know that this is going to be good. I want to know that this is going to be solid. Now, it might be solid because you're definitely not going to get this game in June 2022. I could be wrong. I didn't end up backing it, so I don't pay attention to the updates. But that'd be the price point. I mean, 35 euros for that. For the legendary one. Like, are you going to play all these different bosses, all these different ones right here? Like, these are all, like, end game stuff, right? So I don't even think you're playing with more than one of those at a time. How many, again, are you going to get through just with the base game? Let alone adding this whole other mode. Let alone adding this whole other sideboard. Let alone all the mage side of things, which is a whole nother element of things alongside the Witchers. Like, those, I mean, again, seem like add-ons as opposed to core gameplay, whereas Marvel United was core. Again, or do you do the Valeria Card Kingdoms thing? You know? They had like a bunch of different campaigns, adding, an expansion every time. Aeon's End doing the same thing. Root. Not Root. You guys always connect me. Root doing the same thing. Now, again, offering more than one thing, but also spread out campaigns for multiple iterations on layers of the same game. Even something like Cascadia, where you're getting the little promo expansion, essentially. Or Ragnarok, which is getting, a little expansion there. So, there you go. How do you feel about that? Because some of this stuff, definitely, on the small Kickstarter side of things, that is not expected to hit retail widely, yeah, it makes sense. I just backed 9 Minute Kingdoms. I kept it, in case you were wondering. Spoilers for December's roundup. But you're getting these little additional expansions that are all coming with it down here. I forget what they all are. I don't even pay attention half the time. Queen's Will, Dragons, Subjects, Scoring Board, Wind of History, Kingdom Divided, all this little stuff. Like, different game modes. But with something like this, it's, again, a little bit different because, again, I don't know if this is the one's even going to hit retail. I don't know if all those other modes are going to be worth it. But it's going to be easy to play. It's 9 minutes. So if I play a different mode, it's not like it's a 2.5, 3 hour game with The Witcher or something like that. It makes the context very important from that sense then. How many times are you going to play it? Is it going to be realistic to get to the table? Because again, if you bought the whole Witcher thing, I don't care. That's fine. But it's also slightly different than, you know, being stuff that should have been thrown in the first place. So there's a fine line there, definitely. And it's not black and white. I see the accusations a lot of times, especially less so with the expansions and more so with like the stretch goals. That's really where you see it, is you go, okay, this needs a lot more monsters in the stretch goals. That was my big problem with Pathfinder Arena. It needed a lot more of those cards, and they didn't hit those stretch goals, so then the value wasn't perceived to be less, rightly or wrongly so, and then it dropped in funding. And that's where you're seeing it, not necessarily just with the expansions coming outside of these things, but with the stretch goals. Are stretch goals just content that is ripped apart? And that is a completely different argument. And if you asked about the stretch goals, I'd say there are good chances that in some games on crowdfunding, the answer is yes. Absolutely. Especially games that end up funding and canceling, which again is a whole nother tangent. Okay, back to the questions. Email number 5. Last, not least by any means, leisure games, game of games. Game of games. Dear Chris, what games are you looking to play from your shelf of opportunities, quote unquote, over the holidays? Yours truly, not lonely at all, Jeffrey, Salinka, Taisei, and Jeanette. I know what you did there. You guys are going to have to look up that reference. Okay, let's talk about it. What games do I want to get to the table over the holidays between now and the end of the year? Okay, now I am going to give you 7 games. I'm going to get played probably at most 2 or 3 of these. At most, because I know myself, even though I'm off for the whole time. Because it's more of an opportunity to play them, especially at night and especially with family being around. Number 1 here, Battle for Paternia. Tabletop, MOBA game, Stone Circle Games. I owe it to these guys. They sent me a review copy a while back, and I am big interested into this 2-player MOBA-esque game with STANDEES! And it's just got 8-bit art, and I think that's kind of cool, and it's deep enough, but it's not like overwhelmingly deep, and so I really want to get this one played to see how much I actually like it, because I love the idea behind it, and it's just, I'm not a big MOBA person. And so again, it's relatively straightforward, and it's not too big overhead-wise, and so this is a game I think I could see my wife actually somewhat enjoying because of those reasons. And again, I don't mind the standees. I don't mind the 8-bit art. The 2-player dueling nature of the MOBA lanes and everything is relatively streamlined. And I think it just looks solid. That's number 1. Number 2, Babylonia. It's a Knizia game. Knizia? I'm Rainer. It's a Rainer game. You know what I'm talking about. I'm going to screw up it if I mispronounce it, as I always do. But this is in line with the other games of this ilk from him. Yellow and Yangtze, Tigris and Euphrates, Babylonia, Samurai. Those are the games that this is compared to when people are talking about it, with some people saying that they like it more, some people saying they like it less, some people saying it's just a little bit different spin on things so that you can like it and like the others just as much. And I actually love me some Yellow and Yangtze. And that's before the game went out of print. Like, did you know there was an expansion that was going to be made for Yellow and Yangtze? Like, man, that would have been awesome. But anyway, I love the idea of this. I love the simplicity of these games while still having so much nuance and so much depth and so much difference just with what's there in the first place. And this game looks to offer the same side of things in a different way. And so I'm excited from that side of things. Third up now, again, surprise, surprise to no one, Dune Imperium. I traded for a copy, I believe, in the November math trade on Board Game Geek, and I just need to get it played. I want to see what all the fuss is about. I want to see if I like this deck building, worker placement side of things. As I talked about earlier with Brian Boru, where you're taking a mechanism that I do not like as much, and you're giving me a mechanism I do like. How is it going to meld together? And is it going to create a completely mixed emulsion? Or is it going to still stay separated like oil and water? And I don't know. I am intrigued. I want to know. I want to see. I want to test it. I want to see how just my interest is in a game like this. Because again, it's doing something different. And I'm rewarding it in the sense that I traded for it. And I want to actually get it to the table. So that is another one on my short list. Next one up, you've never heard of this one. This is Anna's Roundtable. This is Fire Emblem, the board game. It says 2 to 4 player strategic battling. I have it upstairs. It was the rule book that I previewed the other week on the PAX U video, and it is a 2-playing dueling game-ish, but you can also do a 4-player mode that also includes a boss mode, and you're drawing cards and playing cards against the opponent. And again, this actually looks nothing like the actual gameplay. And so this is an old like mock-up photo, essentially. This is a much better representation of things. And it's just a little bit keyword heavy, so you need to be aware of that, and that's okay. And it's a little bit of three-dimensional Exceed, if you will, where you're trying to control areas rather than just take each other out, though. So it's bringing that element, which is slightly different, of a control aspect, which is the biggest question mark for me, is how much do I like the control aspect, because the powers are cool, and the deck of cards that are all unique, all done by different artists, is like literally this thick. I'm not joking. It is a huge stack of cards. So I'm excited, and this one, again, is going to be very easy because I've read the rulebook twice now, and the overhead is relatively simple in terms of the actual rules. It's got a lot of keywords that you need to be aware of that are going to be utilized on both sides as you play your characters. Next up, speaking of low overhead, Osprey's other game, Imperium. Now, this is Legends. I have Legends, this 1 to 2 player deck builder. I have not even, it's sitting right up here. I haven't even cracked the rulebook yet. But this is another game that I might actually start to play solo, as much as I hate doing that, because then if I ask my wife to play with me, light just went out, we'll see what's going on here, then I think it's going to be much easier to play if I can already explain it because I've already played it. Now, again, is that going to give me an advantage? Probably, but I have heard people ranting and raving about this on the deck building side of things as something the next step up, something slightly more complicated. I've heard the rulebook isn't always the best, but I'm really interested to see if my interest matches up, because I have been hesitantly like not trying to acquire the classics version until I know how much I like this one. I wish it was a little bit higher player count. I wish it had a little bit more of that, but I'm super intrigued to see how all of these different factions really work. And again, sort of like Exceed, finding the one that jives with you the best and how you can manipulate things in the first place, because they all are asymmetric in that sense, and they're all going to work differently, and I kind of want to see how it lines up for me and which one I prefer. So that is very high on the list. Now, next up, again, this is going to be weird, Mythic Battles Pantheon. Now, I'm going to say I need to get this back to the table because on the 31st, Ragnarok Pledge Manager closes. And so what I need to do is decide how much more I'm going to get from the Pledge Manager for Ragnarok, because I don't really know. I kind of want to get all of Loki's kids, those guys, but I don't know if I can justify it, especially not having played Pantheon hardly at all. And my friend who knows how to play Pantheon, I'm looking at you, Vin. I'm calling you on this video if you're still watching. Keeps bailing on me, man. We got to play some Pantheon. We got to play some Pantheon. I am all about the Pantheon in the two-playing dueling games, but there's not a great way to learn it apart from playing it. This is a whole nother issue. This is a surprisingly high-rated, very well-thought-of game that has very little content on it from a video side of things, which is freaking weird. But anyway, I actually love me some Ragnarok more than I love me some Pantheon, but I'm hesitant to get more because just the base pledge of Ragnarok is like massive in the first place. So I don't really need to spend any more money. I probably will, but that's not the point. Anyway, last up, I traded for a copy of Too Many Bones. I traded for it locally. Got it. Went in on the last Kickstarter with Unbreakable. And I need to see, again, how much do I like this to see how much I'm going to spend during the Pledge Manager additionally. Because I'm looking at like 1 or 2 small things in the Pledge Manager, but I'm not looking at anything massive. And I just need to know because, again, this is one I could see myself playing with one of the kids, especially my almost 8-year-old at this point, when I know how to play it and when I can explain it well. And when he has a little bit more of an attention span for playing a game more than 20 or 30 minutes. So there you go. That is my short list of games I need to play or want to play before the end of the year. Potentially. Maybe 1 or 2, hopefully. Wow, this video went really long. I was not expecting this video to go half as long as this video did. Well, that's what you get for doing viewer emails. You guys are a demanding crowd. So there you go. Yeah, that's all I got. That's all I got right now. Plenty of other videos, reviews, a little bit of this and that. January's coming, which means I'm going to do a little bit of crowdfunding roundup from 2021. I'm going to do upcoming for 2022. There's going to be my roundup personally from December. There's going to be a couple videos actually from 2021. We're going to break it down into a couple different things. Hopefully that's a little bit different than what other people are doing, because I think there's a couple topics that are going to get overlooked, and I think you can break it down in several different ways that hopefully no one else steals my idea of is thinking along the same lines as me. But as you know, if you've made it this far into my videos, not many other people think like me on this side of things. So that is both a blessing and a curse. Believe me, my wife agrees to as well. So, okay, that's all I got. That's all I got. Peace out. You'll notice cat did actually not interfere too much with this video, right? He sat on my lap once, you never saw it, and then he got down and is sitting like right off camera, like right here. So he's just chilling there, you know? It's cool. It's cool. I'd show you him, but you know what? Here he is. Come here, Loki. Surprise cat video ending. Hi, buddy. Hi, you're such a sweet boy, aren't you? Nicest cat, but a little bit anxious about things, so he's probably going to run away now after this. Yep, there you go. Okay, peace out. Stay classy. Have a great day. See you around. Because it all started massively quality.